The desert wanted me dead. 12 rounds in my Winchester, 15 Comancheros closing in behind me, 3 days without water under the Arizona sun. I had survived the hell of Antietam, watched my wife and children taken by scarlet fever, wandered like a ghost across territories that had no use for broken men. But here, in the Gila Valley, October of 1874, I figured this was the day Silas Creed finally met his end. I pressed my back against the granite boulder, feeling the heat radiate through my torn shirt. My lips had cracked 2 days ago. My tongue felt like leather. The water hole behind me had gone dry sometime in August, leaving nothing but cracked mud and the bones of animals who had trusted it too long. Reno Vance sat on his horse 200 yards out, that snake smile visible even at this distance. Fat man with a black beard, thick as brambles, and eyes that held no more warmth than a rattlesnake's. He ran guns to anyone with gold. Cavalry renegades, Mexican bandits, hostile tribes. I had seen him make a deal with men who wore Union blue, selling them repeating rifles that would end up killing settlers 3 counties over. That was my mistake, witnessing that transaction. Now Vance needed me silent, and dead men told no tales. His Comancheros spread out in a half-moon formation, cutting off any retreat. Dust rose behind their horses like brown curtains. I counted them again. 15, all armed, all killers. I checked my ammunition. 12 rounds of .44-40 for the Winchester Model 1873. 6 in the Colt Peacemaker on my hip. 18 bullets against 15 men who wanted my blood on the sand. I had faced worse odds at Antietam, but I had been younger then, stronger, before grief had hollowed me out and left nothing but a walking corpse who had forgotten how to die. The first rider spurred forward, testing my range. I let him come. 80 yards, 70. At 60 yards, I raised the Winchester, led him by half a horse length, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked against my shoulder. The rider pitched backward off his saddle, dead before he hit the ground. Chaos erupted. Horses screamed. Men shouted. I worked the lever, found my next target, fired. Another man fell. The Winchester barked twice more in quick succession, and 2 more Comancheros tumbled from their mounts. 4 down, 11 remaining, 8 rounds in the rifle. They scattered for cover, diving behind rocks and scrub brush. Bullets whined past my head, chipping stone, spraying dust. I pressed myself flat, making myself small, waiting for the next clear shot. Vance's voice carried across the desert, sharp with fury. "Surround him! He runs out of bullets soon enough." He was right. I could count. Every pull of the trigger brought me closer to the end. I dropped 2 more before they pinned me down completely. 6 rounds left. 9 men still breathing. The math would not save me. Then the desert itself seemed to rise up and fight. They came from the yucca shadows like spirits given flesh. 8 Chiricahua fighters, faces painted black and red, the colors of war and death. Spencer carbines and short bows appeared as if from nowhere, and suddenly the air filled with the crack of gunfire and the whistle of arrows. The Comancheros never had.
You fight like someone who's already buried the fear.
What's a fear?
Fear doesn't leave, you just learn where to put it.
I lost my family.
A chance to regroup. Caught between my position and this new threat, they died in confusion. I watched Vance take an arrow through the shoulder, heard him scream orders that no one followed anymore. He kicked his horse into a gallop, fleeing east with 2 survivors trailing behind, leaving 9 of his men dead on the desert floor. 90 seconds. The battle lasted 90 seconds. I stood slowly, Winchester still raised, not knowing if I had been rescued or simply chosen for a different kind of death. The painted men approached, weapons ready, their eyes measuring me with the cold calculation of those who had learned long ago that white faces meant trouble. One stepped forward. Younger than the others, maybe 30, with a face carved from granite and eyes that burned with hatred deeper than any wound. A scar ran across his left cheek, pale against copper skin. He said something in Apache, the words harsh and clipped. I shook my head. I don't understand. He stared at me for a long moment, then gestured with his carbine toward the west. March. The meaning needed no translation. The Chiricahua camp sat in a bend of the Gila River, where cottonwood trees offered shade and the water ran clean. 35 lodges of tanned hide blended with the red earth, nearly invisible until you stood among them. Women paused their work to stare. Children hid behind their mothers. I counted maybe 180 people, but fewer than 30 fighting men. The rest were old, young, or female. A hard-fought people, survivors of something terrible. The scarred one led me to the center of the camp where an old man waited. Silver hair fell past his shoulders, bright against skin weathered by decades of sun and wind. A scar ran from his forehead to his left cheek, splitting his eyebrow in half. Despite his age, he stood straight, and his gaze held the weight of a man who had seen empires rise and fall. He spoke English slowly, each word placed like a stone in a wall. You killed 4 Comancheros. I nodded, unsure where this was heading. They sell guns. Guns that kill my people. Guns that kill your people, too. The old man paused, studying me the way a hawk studies a mouse. Enemy of my enemy. I waited. I am Nantan, chief of this band. He gestured toward the scarred one. This is Goyathle, leader of our braves. He does not trust you. Goyathle's hand rested on his knife. His glare could have cut stone. Nantan continued, his voice carrying across the silent camp. Our law says when a man sheds blood beside our people, he has earned a debt. We pay our debts. He raised a staff carved with symbols I did not recognize. The crowd parted and a woman stepped forward. She was tall, maybe 24 summers, with hair black as midnight bound by silver rings. Her eyes met mine without flinching, sharp as obsidian and twice as hard. She wore a deerskin dress, but a knife hung at her belt alongside a pouch of ammunition. This was no princess waiting to be saved. Everything about her stance said fighter. Nantan's voice rang out across the assembly. This is my daughter. Nalan will be your wife. Through her, you belong to us. Refuse and you insult my blood. For a moment, the world stopped spinning. Goyathle exploded forward, his knife clearing its sheath. No, he is white. Same as the ones who killed Elope. Same as the ones who murdered my children at Camp Grant. Armed men shifted, some moving behind Goyathle, others holding steady. The air crackled with violence barely contained. Nalan raised her hand, and somehow that simple gesture cut through the chaos. She looked at me, and when she spoke, her English was precise, educated.
Drink. If you fall, you slow us down.
That your kindness?
That's my logic.
Logic saved me more than prayers ever did.
Good. Then stay alive for something that matters.
Cold as winter steel. You do not need to like this. Vance will return with more men. Cavalry will come eventually. You need us to survive. We need you to speak with our enemies. She paused, letting the words sink in. This is not marriage. This is a war alliance. I looked around the camp. Armed men with weapons ready, an old chief waiting for my answer, and a woman who showed no fear, only calculation. Since Margaret died, I had wandered without purpose. Maybe this was one. I accept, I said, not because I want to, because all those empty seasons taught me nothing except how to survive. Maybe now I can learn how to live. The first 2 weeks taught me how little I knew about survival. Nalan did not waste words on instruction. She demonstrated, and I either learned or suffered the consequences. She showed me how to find water in damp sand beneath cottonwood roots, how to read tracks in the dust and know whether cavalry, Comancheros, or Apache had passed, which birds fell silent when danger approached, and which cried warnings to the sky. I taught her in return how to field strip a Spencer carbine in darkness, how to clean the barrel with animal fat and keep the action smooth, how to adjust the trigger for a cleaner pull. One evening, as we sat cleaning weapons by firelight, she broke the silence that usually hung between us. "You were a soldier, 3rd Cavalry, Sergeant, before I quit. Why did you quit?" I stared into the flames, seeing faces I had tried to forget. My wife was Margaret, my son Thomas, my daughter Sarah. Scarlet fever took them winter of 70. I went to town for medicine. When I came back, all 3 were cold. Nalen's hands paused on the carbine. My mother died at Camp Grant. 144 Apache killed while the men hunted. Women, children, old men, no one to fight back. "I heard about that," I said quietly. "Goethe lost his wife Allah up there, his 2 children. The army killed them while he was away." She looked at me, and for the first time I saw something other than coldness in her gaze. "We both carry ghosts." I had nothing to add. Some wounds did not need words. On the 15th day, Goethe blocked my path as I walked through camp. Armed men gathered, forming a circle around us. His voice carried loud enough for everyone to hear. "You marry the chief's daughter, but you have not proven yourself. You are only a coward who got lucky." He threw his knife into the dirt between us. "Bare-handed, first to fall loses. Refuse, and you are not fit to stand among us." The circle tightened. I saw Nalin at the edge, her face unreadable. Nantan watched from his lodge, offering no intervention. I removed my gun belt and let it drop. Goethe came at me fast, faster than I expected. He knew this ground, knew how to use the slope, the loose sand, the angle of the sun. His first strike caught me across the jaw and sent me stumbling. His second put me on the ground. I rolled away from his boot, came up tasting blood. He was younger, quicker, fueled by hatred, 3 years old and burning hot as ever. But I had spent years in army camps where men settled disputes with fists, and I had learned from masters of dirty fighting. We traded blows for what felt like hours, probably 10 minutes. My ribs screamed. Blood ran from a cut above my eye. But Goethe was breathing hard now, slowing down. I caught his arm on a wild swing, twisted, and took him to the ground. My forearm locked across his throat, applying pressure but not enough to kill. "I do not need to kill you to prove myself," I gasped, blood dripping onto his face. "I need you alive to protect this tribe." Goethe went still. The hatred in his eyes did not fade, but something else flickered there. Surprise, maybe, or the beginning of grudging respect. I released him and stood, offering my hand. He ignored it, rising on his own. But when he walked away, he did not reach for his knife. Small victories. 3 days later, a scout rode into camp with his horse lathered and his face pale as ash. 2 enemies, both coming. The council gathered within the hour. Nantan sat.
"If I talk fast enough, I can buy us time."
Time bought with lies breaks like dry wood.
"Truth gets people killed."
No.
Stone-faced as the scout delivered his report. Reno Vance had returned with 25 Comancheros, camped at Skeleton Pass, blocking the eastern route. And from the north, Colonel Ezra Crane leading 70 cavalry from Fort Bowie. 4 days away, trapped between 2 enemies, 25 defenders against nearly 100 guns. The camp erupted. Women grabbed children, old men chanted prayers. Young braves shouted for war, while elders counseled retreat. Goethe slammed his fist against a lodge pole. "We fight. Ambush them in the canyons before they reach the valley." Nantan shook his head slowly. "We lose too many. Not enough men left to protect the women and children. Then we run, hide in the mountains like our grandfathers, and starve through winter, lose the crops, watch the children die of hunger instead of bullets." Nalin's voice cut through the chaos. "There must be another way." All eyes turned to me, the outsider, the white man who had brought nothing but trouble. "Let me go to Vance first," I said. "He is a traitor, not a soldier. He wants profit, not war. If I can make him leave, we only face one enemy." Goyathle laughed bitterly. "You think he will listen? He wants you dead. He wants money more than he wants me dead. That is the only advantage I have." Nantan studied me for a long moment. "And if he kills you? Then you know he cannot be reasoned with, and you lose one man instead of 20. The old chief nodded slowly. "You have the courage of a fighter. Go." I rode to Skeleton Pass alone, Winchester across my back, Colt at my hip. Vance waited with his Comancheros spread behind him, 25 hard men with nothing to lose. The arrow wound in his shoulder had been bandaged, but his eyes still held murder. "Creed, you have guts coming back." "What do you want, Vance? Really want?" He laughed, the sound like gravel in a barrel. "I want you dead for seeing what you should not have seen." "That all?" His smile faded. "I also want money. Apache pay good prices for guns. Dead Apache do not pay anything." "Then here is my offer. Pull back from the pass. Leave the route open. When Crane leaves, the tribe buys from you. 50 rifles, your price." Vance scratched his beard. "And you? I still want you dead. After everything is finished, if you still want it then, we settle things between us. One-on-one. Fair fight." "Fair?" He spat. "Nothing about this is fair." He leaned forward in his saddle. "I want something else. That Spencer carbine you carry, the one with the silver inlay. I saw it when my boys brought back the bodies." I hesitated. The carbine belonged to Nolan, a gift from her mother before Camp Grant. "That is not mine to give." "Then we have no deal." Vance gathered his reins. "Wait." My mind raced. "I will convince her. But if I cannot, I give you my Winchester instead. Model 1873, custom sights. Worth more than the Spencer." Vance considered, his snake eyes calculating profit against revenge. Finally, he spat tobacco juice into the dust. "Deal. But remember, Creed, I do not forget. When this is over, one of us dies." He turned his horse and rode east, his Comancheros following. One enemy gone, one remaining. I returned to camp and delivered the news. Vance had withdrawn, but the price of the agreement sat heavy in my stomach. Nolan listened without expression. When I finished, she simply said, "You promised him my mother's rifle?" "I promised to try, or give him mine instead." She was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. "The tribe matters more than any rifle.
You
I
can
will
leave.
decide when
The
this
debt
is
is
over."
paid.
Leave to
No
where?
more time for discussion.
I've been running for
Crane
years.
was coming.
And now?
I
Now
outlined the
stay.
second part of my plan. I would go to Crane, pretend to be an escaped prisoner, and lead the cavalry away from the valley. Buy time for the tribe to prepare defenses. Nolan objected. "He is not a fool. He will see through you." "Maybe, but we have no other choice." She prepared me in silence, tearing my shirt, rubbing ash and dried blood into my skin, cutting my hair ragged. When she finished, I looked like a man who had suffered weeks of captivity. She pressed a small leather pouch into my hand. "My mother's charm, the only thing left after Camp Grant." "Why give this to me?" Her voice wavered, the first crack I had seen in her armor. "Because if you die, I want part of my mother with the man who gave me reason to believe again." I tucked the pouch inside my shirt, over my heart. "I will come back." "That is an order," she said, not a plea, a command from one survivor to another. I rode north toward the dust cloud of 70 cavalry. Colonel Ezra Crane sat his horse like a statue, back straight as a ramrod, gray mustache trimmed to perfection, pale blue eyes that held no more warmth than a Montana winter. He had burned 3 Apache villages to ash, ordered the deaths of women and children without flinching. The soldiers called him the vulture of the South. I collapsed before his column, playing the part of an exhausted prisoner. Name and rank: Silas Creed, former sergeant, 3rd Cavalry. Apache took me 3 weeks ago. Just escaped. Crane's eyes drilled into me. Where is their camp? East, sir. Caves in the cliff face. Maybe 40 or 50 armed men. Well equipped. His mustache twitched. 50? My scouts report only 25. My heart hammered. I had made a mistake. Could be reinforcements from another band, sir. I cannot be sure. Crane stared at me for 10 seconds that felt like 10 years. Then he nodded. Give him water. Put him on a mule. We ride east at dawn. I breathed again. The plan was working. 3 days later, I slipped away in darkness and rode hard for the valley. But when I arrived, the scout's report turned my blood to ice. Crane had turned back. 70 cavalry marching straight for the camp. He had seen through my lie. Goyathle drew his knife. I told you, he has led them to us. No, I stood my ground. I made a mistake with the numbers. His scouts knew the truth. But no one is dead yet. Crane is half a day behind. There is still time. Time for what? To do what he does not expect. Face him directly. No lies, no tricks. Nantan's voice cut through the argument. You will go alone? No, Nalan comes with me. Crane needs to see we speak for both sides. The first day of negotiation, Crane refused to meet us. We sat on horseback under the blazing sun for 6 hours. No shade, no water. His soldiers watched from their tents, some laughing, some placing bets on how long we would last. At sunset, Crane finally emerged. What do you want? Peace, I said, for both sides. He laughed and walked away. The second day, he agreed to talk. We sat across a folding table, maps spread between us. Crane demanded the entire valley, surrender of all weapons, relocation to the San Carlos Reservation. That is not peace, Nalan said. That is death by another name. Crane's face hardened. Then we have nothing to discuss. He stood. At dawn, we attack. The third day, I watched 70 soldiers prepare for war, checking rifles, sharpening sabers. The camp stirred with the grim efficiency of men who had done this before. Nalan and I rode out one final time. This time I did not ask for negotiation. I stated facts. You can kill them all, Colonel. Every man, woman, and child. But you will lose soldiers. 20, maybe 30. And for what? To report another massacre? Washington is tired of massacres. They want treaties. Peace sells better than dead children. Crane's jaw tightened. You speak like a politician. I speak like a man who has seen enough death. Then Nalan stepped forward, and something in her bearing made even the colonel pause. My mother died at Camp Grant, she said, her voice steady as stone. 144 people, women, children, old men, killed while our men hunted. Not one fighter among the dead. Crane's expression did not change, but he listened. You know what that did to the survivors? It did not make us afraid. It made us ready to die. Every brave in that valley lost someone at Camp Grant. They will fight until the last breath leaves their bodies. The question is, Colonel, how many of your soldiers are you willing to bury to kill people who have already accepted death? Silence stretched across the desert. Wind whispered through the scrub brush. A horse stamped. A soldier coughed. Crane sat down. The western half of the valley, he said finally. No raids beyond the borders. You surrendered 10 rifles. I looked at Nalan. She gave the smallest nod. Deal. 1 month later, Crane withdrew his forces. The treaty held, fragile as desert flowers, but alive. A message arrived from Reno Vance. 3 words scratched on dirty paper. I remember, Creed. I burned it. That was a problem for another day. Nalan kept her mother's Spencer. She gave me a different rifle instead. An old Sharps her father had traded for years ago. For Vance, she said, when the time comes, it shoots straighter than anything he deserves. On the evening of that first peaceful month, I stood on the hillside overlooking the valley. The sun bled red and gold across the western sky. In the camp below, drums began to sound for the first time since Crane had appeared. Nalan climbed the hill and stood beside me. "You could leave now," she said. "The debt is paid. Crane is gone. You are free." "Free to go where?" I watched the shadows lengthen across the valley. I came here looking for a place to die. Instead, I found something I did not expect. "What is that?" "A reason to wake up tomorrow." She almost smiled. Almost. "Winter comes soon. It will be hard. I have survived worse." "Not alone, you haven't." She looked at me, and for the first time her gaze held neither coldness nor calculation, just the simple truth of two people who had lost everything and found, against all odds, something worth protecting. The sun sank below the horizon, and darkness spread across the Gila Valley like a blanket. Somewhere in the camp, children laughed. A woman sang an old song. Life continued, stubborn and defiant, in a land that had tried its best to end it. I had come to Arizona running from ghosts. Tonight, standing beside a woman who carried her own ghosts, I finally stopped running. The debt of blood had been paid. What came next would be written in choices, not obligations. And for the first time since Margaret died, I wanted to see what tomorrow would bring. In the unforgiving desert of the Arizona Territory, where every sunrise brings new danger and every sunset might be the last, some men find redemption in the strangest places. Silas Creed rode into the Gila Valley expecting death. He found something far more difficult. He found a reason to live.
The story leaves a powerful lesson. People cannot heal by running away from pain, but can only be reborn by daring to confront it and choosing to live again. Silas Cutter thought that solitude in the mountains would keep him safe, free from loss, but in reality, it was only prolonging a life dead from the inside. The appearance of Morningstar and Greyfeather in the snowstorm forced him to make a crucial decision: continue being a shadow or become a responsible man, with something to protect. The story also reminds us of the injustice of prejudice when Morningstar was labeled a curse simply because others couldn't control their greed and violence. Instead of blaming the victim, we need to look directly at the nature of the perpetrator. Ultimately, the greatest lesson is the power of companionship. Two people with broken bones can still support each other, rebuild trust, rebuild a home, and rebuild their lives. Second chances don't come automatically. We have to choose them.